All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachakwadash. I want to give double honors to my apostles and elders, great millstone, who teach very well. While I learned this truth from, and salutation out there to the hopeful elect, who continue to push this word in all truth, faith, and sincerity. And also, Shalom to all the men, women, and children who sincerely believe upon the words of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. And today, just basically getting on Esau, man. You know, being the devil that the Bible speaks of, man. And just how this guy basically fucked up our people since day one. You know, ever since that Jake came over here, there was a point when our people as a whole was connected unto the power, man. You know, but ever since we've been over here in the West, 2/3 of our people have basically turned their back upon Yahweh Shai and turned their face upon to Esau, man. You know, and we can see the result of that. You know, and the result of that is what? Damn death. That's the reason why bitches rap about abortion. You know, that's why a guy would kill somebody and take his drugs and say, I'm smoking on a Tuka pack, showing you how ass backwards our people have become. You know, we was once kings and priests, but the Lord have debased us, man, into a lower state and showing you the power that he have, bro. Because at the end of the day, bro, it would have been foreign if we was in the time of Solomon to say, yeah, man, you know, this guy right here, he gonna be over us. That was foreign, man. But Yahweh Shai did a perfect work. He did a miracle. Let's start with here in Daniel 4. This is the book of Daniel, Salah. Daniel 4, and I'm gonna jump down to verse 17. I'm gonna get this in NLT. It says, for this has been decreed by the messengers, it is commanded by the holy ones, by the prophets, man, so that everyone may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdoms of the world. So it's Yahweh Shai who's controlling the incomings and outcomings of the kingdoms upon the planet Earth. Let's go ahead and continue on though. It says, he gives them to anyone he chooses, even to the lowest of people. And he actually gave the, a rulership into a caveman. You know what I'm saying? Let's go ahead and get that in the book of, what that is. That's Job. I think it's 38 or 30. 30. So like Yaki. Yeah, this is the book of Job 30 and verse 1, because the Lord set up the lords of people. Once you really looking at Edomite in this true form, you're going to see like, damn, how does this guy got into power? You know, it was this guy, not to get off subject, a couple years ago, and I got a witness too, man. A couple years ago, man, I was, cutting grass and shit during the pandemic. And I ran through by this black lady house, bro. And I cut her grass and everything, and it was a guy across the street. And I asked her, like, what's up with him? Do he want his grass cut? And she was like, no, he's sick. And basically, Jake, basically Jake was taking care of the Edomite, while the sister be out of town. You know what I'm saying? But he was mentally ill, for the lack of better words. And so I had went out, and I'm like, yeah, basically it was like, yeah, we'll pay you to cut his grass too. So, Jake, hyped up to get a little bread and shit like that. So I'm cutting the grass and everything, and I'm in the backyard with the weed eater. And this guy came out, and I promise you, man, he was the true form of a damn Edomite. He had a long beard, long hair, but he was so frail and fragile. Knees, nigga came out there with some tighty whities on, knees was buckling, and it just shows you Esau in his natural estate can't do the things that he's doing right now. If it wasn't for the sword, the weaponry, and the deceit that the Lord have gave him, guess what? This nigga would still be in the caves. And it tells us right here in the book of Job 30 and verse 1. It says, but now they that are younger than I have me in derision. And the reason why I say, yeah, they that are younger than I, because Esau is childish as hell. That's why, the biggest thing that he do is animation, man. That's one of the ways he can push forth his messages too. Nigga love nut jokes. You 35 years old, you still hearing the nigga in the nuts. That's sick. What's that TV show Jackass? Showing you the mindset of this nigga, man. It says, have had me in derision. Let's get that word derision, man. Real quick. Let's get that word derision. Derision. To laugh, to mock, to just. And that's what Jake have become nowadays, man. Just jesters for the so-called white man. Now you sing and dance and y'all fight each other for the entertainment of these cave beasts, man. You know? It says another word, to deride. Because we was on the trail coming back into our power. But, Esau, he tried to deride that. You know? That's pretty much it on that. It says, have had me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to set with the flock of my dogs. Now, who love dogs more than the Edomites, man? Even when they get wet, they smell like a dog. But you know that they'll do some unsavory things into an animal. You know? It ain't like it's something new. No, Job knew about these niggas back then, men and women. You know, it's sick to say it, but there's certain websites out here that shows you this and that. You know what I'm saying? How much you want to bet. It's mostly Edomites that's going to. It might be a sick Jake that watching is really into it, but it's mostly Edomites that's into that, man. Mostly Edomites you see doing crazy things like that. Continuing on. It says, yeah, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished. For want and famine, they were solitary. And the reason why they were solitary, because they knew, nigga, you can't come around here. They knew once an Edomite came around, only bad things would happen. You know, you see this nigga, and you see this nigga with the dogs. You got your dog watching the sheep. And all of a sudden, instead of the dog barking, you get him weeping and crying, and you go out there and it's an Edomite messing with him, man. You know? Let's go ahead and continue on. It says, for want and famine, they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness in former time, desolate and waste, who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. They were driven from among men. They cry after them as a thief, because where this man go, death follows. This tells us that in the book of Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, that he is as death. You know? And again, it's just his actions. And even tells us that too in St. John 10:10. It says, the thief cometh not, but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. And in the ancient world, people knew who the Edomite was, and they knew that the Edomites was not to be trusted. But we already know the winners get to rewrite history. Now that's 10 million years ago. We was a caveman. We did that. No, man, that wasn't too long ago, man. But again, Esau in his natural estate, you will see why the Lord told you to stay away from this nigga. But let's continue on though. It says, they were driven from among men, they cry after them as a thief. It says, to dwell in the thick cliffs of the valleys, in caves of the earth, and in the rocks. Now, it's a place called Petra. Now, once you go into Petra, it actually goes back into rocks, but once you look at the picture of Petra, it actually looks like the U.S. today. And where is Petra? Edom. Modern day Edom, man. They carved into the rocks, the pillars, look just like the damn White House. But again, that's a sign to show that you are the damn Edomites. This is the history that this guy is trying to run from. The history that you are the cavemen. It says, among the bushes they prayed, under the nettles they gathered together. Yes, you was out there in the wild. You was a beast man. It says, under the nettles they gathered together. They were children of fools. Yeah, children of base men. They were viler than the earth. And that's it, man. The lowest of people the Lord have set them in rulership up today. And we can see the result of that. That's why the LGXYZ community is out here. You know? Let's go ahead and continue on though. Let's get this in the NLT. Job 30:8, it says, they are it's like they are nameless fools, outcasts from society. And we can see why people hate, you know, the so-called white people. Because the things that these people have been doing, not only for years, not only for decades, but centuries and eons, man. Generations and generations, and you getting worse and worse as the time goes on. Even tells us that in the book of Sirach, the 12th chapter, as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. So even though he don't have that caveman, like the same guy I told you about with the beard and the tighty whities, he ain't got that look no more. But he still have that wicked mentality, man. In this nigga mind, he's worse off than he was before, you know? Let's go ahead and continue on. It says, and now I am their son. Yeah, I am their power. Now we just niggas, man. Black on black crime and things like that. But also, we're looked at as low value people. We kings and priests, showing you that this guy turned the world upside down. And the world is just fucked up. You basically get celebrated, you know, for cooking a half-cooked steak. But you'll get demonized for disciplining your child. This guy, Adrian Peterson, man. You know what I'm saying? You know, you'll get praised for making your child transition, but you'll be demonizing for putting a righteous thought in your child, man. You know? Let's go on and continue on. It says, they abhor me, and the reason why they abhor us because we righteous. What the scriptures say, they hated him, they rebuked within the gates. That's why he took down the information of Esau. You know, you type up Esau today, they'll say Jacob's uncle. No, let's get into the history, man. You know, let's get into the judgment of who he is today. You know, we know who the Jews are, you know, so-called. So let's go down. Let's see who Ham is. Let's see who Elam and Ishmael. You know, on down the line. Let's go ahead and continue on. It says, they abhor me, they flee far away from me, and spare not to spit in my face. Let's get this in the NLT. They despise me and won't come near me. Yes, you walking down the street, now the bitch holding her purse even tight. When you the sick freako, man. You the nasty nigga upon the planet Earth, man. We righteous, man. And once you compare, you know, even though, you know, Jake go off and shit like that, but once you compare the shit once you compare your everyday life into an Edomite, man, you a saint, op. If you compare your everyday life into a fucking Edomite, you will be a saint, brother. And you are. Because again, even though we still want to please our power, this nigga just willingly wicked. Let's read this one more time. I'm going to close it out. It says, they despise me. They won't come near me except to spit in my face. So the only way they'll help Jake out, the only way they'll, you know, put Jake up on a pedestal, if it's a benefit unto them, man. You know? Let's get something real quick and we're going to close it up. Let's go to Sirach. This is the book of Sirach 14 and verse 7. It says, and he doeth good, he doeth not willingly, and at the last he will declare his wickedness. This nigga gave you an NBA contract, and now you tore your Achilles for this nigga, now he waived you, man. It's just a small example to a large example, man. Esau don't love you, and Esau hates you to the utmost because he knew that you belong to the Most High and he belonged to the devil. Simple as that. So yeah, I can pray this video was edifying. We give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakak Wadash. I want to give double honors to my apostle, elders, great millstone, and Shalom.